Hello, my name is Tiê, and I'm a physiotherapist and researcher from Brazil. I was invited to talk a little bit about how I have addressed the language barrier, and I decided to share what I have learned from my own experience. As I said, I'm from Brazil, so I speak Portuguese as my first language. It is common in Brazil to have English classes at school. However, the course is always very basic. Everything from abroad, including movies and TV shows, is often translated and dubbed in Portuguese. So usually, if you don't go to a private English school, we will probably end up not having English as a second language. At the university, for example, we all have few contact with English properly. We only needed English to read articles eventually. So when I started my master's degree, I needed English to read lots of studies. So reading was very, very important to me in that period. It was during my master that I need to use what I would say my very first strategy to language barrier, which was the automated translation. I used it to use the Google Translator, and sometimes I remember I would translate every single word. I use it to make many notes on the manuscript to be easier while reading, and I also use it to have a glossary where I put all the new words that I learned. I'm very visual person, so writing the new word and its meaning helped me to memorize it easier. And in that glossary, I also use it to put all the synonyms together, and it also helped me to memorize all the new words and improve. I remember that was not easy at all, the process of reading a manuscript through this translation process. It would take sometimes more than one day to finish the reading, but however, was good. Like at the end, I understood the manuscript and the English was becoming more and more common to me after reading more and more. So when I finished my master, I had the opportunity to apply for a scholarship to do my PhD abroad. So although I was more familiar with English and would love to take the opportunity to study abroad, I was very concerned about the language barrier. English was something present to me, but it was very far away to be something natural and to feel fluent. So I have then started an English course. I only had 1 year to prepare myself to go abroad. So I started to study English 4 hours per day for 1 year. It was very exhausting for me, but this was the only way I found to be in contact with the language. So in this intensive course, I started as a beginner and I finished after 1 year at the intermediate to advanced level. Then I moved to Australia, and at the beginning, everything was very, very hard to me. So I used it to feel like I couldn't understand most of the things, and I just realized that the theory is very far away from the practice. I just realized that I actually needed time to get used to the language. So by that time, I started my second strategy to language barrier, I believe, which was to practice with everyday things. So I decided to talk as much as I could with people around me. I needed to overcome my fear of speaking, but I had a specific objective. So I really wanted to tackle the language barrier. I also got TV as my friend. So watching TV was a way I found to listen to everyday things. And it was great to learn new words and to improve my vocabulary. So Mark Ferguson, who is the presenter of the news in one of the main TV channels in Sydney, was my best friend for a while. And of course, I had the opportunity to live in an English-speaking country. So all the places I went, I had to talk if I wanted to have something. However, I believe if you're not immersed in the language, I still believe you can dive into the culture and in the language using the internet, for example. So changing the language of a movie, listening English radio. So I think there are much more strategies actually nowadays. And then after living 1 year abroad, I came to visit Brazil, and I stayed, I think, for 1 month in Brazil. And then I went back to Australia. And when I arrived back in Australia, I remember I finally found something was different to me. So I felt that I had turned the key, kind of, and English was finally there somewhere. Of course, I still needed many improvements, but things were clear. So I could feel the barrier was a bit smaller, I think. Then I started my third strategy to the language barrier, which was improving my understanding of the language. So that time I started to be involved in projects out of my PhD. So I started to have meetings regarding projects that were out of the day-by-day activities. And I also decided to be part of projects in different areas to talk with different people. And it was just amazing. So professional presentations were also a moment to be out of my comfort zone. And so participating in international conference, not just as a presenter, but also organizing and coordinating workshops, for example, and small events, they were all amazing opportunities to me to grow my knowledge of the language. So I consider that I'm constantly in this period of improving my understanding of the language, but nowadays I feel English is not a huge barrier anymore to me, at least in the physiotherapy world, and including in the evidence-based physiotherapy. So English will always be my second language, of course, but the most important thing to me is to be able to see how I grow and how I work to reduce this barrier. So this is very, very satisfying to me.
This campaign is supported by World Physiotherapy and physiotherapy organisations in Australia, Italy, France and the Netherlands. Please join us in the PEDro Tackles Barriers to Evidence-Based Physiotherapy campaign and help tackle the biggest barriers to evidence-based physiotherapy. You can follow the campaign on the PEDro webpage, blog or social media.